Thank you all for tuning in for Small Business Saturdays, where we're going to highlight new ways you can support small businesses all across Colorado during these clearly tough times. Many people know I started out as a small business person. Had been laid off, been out of work for a couple of years, and I ended up opening the first brew pub in the Rocky Mountains in an old abandoned warehouse down at 18th and Wynkoop. And I learned firsthand over those 16 years I was in that business that, no matter how good it looks, there could be a disaster right around the corner. But I don't think I ever saw anything like what we're experiencing today and the stress that that's putting on so many of our small businesses. And I'm proud to welcome today Adrian Miller. He's best known as, well, maybe not best known, but better known as the Soul Food Scholar. And he's a native Coloradan, but he's also a James Beard award-winning author. And he wrote a spectacular book called Soul Food, The Surprising Story of American Cuisine, One Plate at a Time. Adrian, great to have you on board.
Thank you, Governor.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Governor Hickenlooper. Good to be with you. And thanks for pointing out that I'm a native Coloradan, because that usually loses me all street cred on the subject of soul food and barbecue.
People think that Denver and Colorado really don't have a significant Black history, and they're just flat wrong.
Yeah, and I'm glad you point that out, because a lot of people, when we hear about the history of discrimination, racial discrimination in our country, a lot of people think, oh, that was just in the South. But right. Unfortunately, that's part of our history as well. And so a part of the 5 points and other parts of Colorado history developed because of racial discrimination, but still people were able to create a vibrant community.
We're in stay-at-home mode.
Yes.
And so I had some barbecue delivered from the Hungry Wolf. You can see this. I can't tell whether you can see this, but I'm probably going to drip it all over myself if I'm not careful. And you brought some barbecue too, right?
Yeah, so I went to a place called AJ's Pit Barbecue, and I got a beef rib. Boom. That's what I got.
I wanted to ask you a couple questions just while we're on barbecue. And, the whole point of this is trying to celebrate on Saturdays small businesses. But
Yeah.
What do minority-owned businesses mean to a neighborhood or to a community?
Yeah, well, I think if we're going to talk about a vibrant community, a vibrant society, it's a place where everybody feels welcome and they feel like they can participate. Because unfortunately, for a lot of our history, African Americans, people of color, women weren't allowed to participate in the economy the same way. So the fact that we have minority businesses and that we have people of color fulfilling their dreams and trying to create wealth for their own family and generational wealth and things for their community, because a lot of these small businesses give to their community tremendously. And so they really, I think, anchor our communities in a way that you don't see in other places. And particularly for people of color, especially during the dark years of Jim Crow segregation, that was our gathering place. That was our country club. So it was a place where all types of people in the community, regardless of class, could come to that spot and connect with each other over great food and support a local entrepreneur. So it just means so much for our community. And that's why my heart just goes out to them with what they're dealing with right now.
Well, I think, and that's my next question. Obviously, one of the real differentials between small businesses owned by people of color generally don't come from wealthy backgrounds.
Exactly. So what you find often with people of color who are trying to operate businesses is that they're undercapitalized, even starting the business. And not everybody, but in a lot of cases, they had poor stock to deal with. They were in buildings that were already kind of dilapidated. There weren't services. They weren't allowed to be downtown or where you have a lot of traffic. So you see all these built-in disadvantages. And then when things get really tough, like you said, if they don't have their own wealth, they don't have home equity that they can borrow against, or they don't have access to private sources of money, you're in a world of hurt. And particularly restaurants. Restaurants are usually running on a shoestring anyway. It's not it's a hard business. So you just see these things just kind of exacerbate. Right now, we're just trying to figure out how can we keep these businesses going so that they can make it through this tough time. As much as we can try to do to support, if you like what people do, the food they make, the products they make, the other things that they do, please try to support them in this tough time to the extent you can.
What other things should we be doing or could we be doing? Obviously, buying to-go food from restaurants or trying to order things to be picked up or delivered from all kinds of small businesses is the first step. Are there other things we could be doing?
I think if you have an interesting skill set that entrepreneur you love could use, volunteer.
Right.
If you're good at social media or website, or you're willing to lend a helping hand, because just to leave the loss of staff, I think that's one way we could really rally around our entrepreneurs in these businesses and support them. So yeah, support them with your dollars. But if you have a talent or something, I think it's the time to reach out.
What's the biggest similarity between restaurants and government, or between the food industry and government?
All right, this is going to be a little bit outside the box, but they're both democratic institutions. If you look at the history of restaurants going back to the 19th centuries, restaurants were places where only the elite used to gather. And the elite defined what good taste was and who had access to a high culture. And so in the 19th century, you start to see the middle class kind of evolve in our country. And then those people kind of changed the dining scene forever. And that's where the popular restaurants really start to become a concept where anybody can go eat and enjoy a meal. And they really changed what good food and dining meant in our country. So that's one example of kind of democracy, small d, coming together in an interesting way. And I think that about government. I mean, for many years, government has been cast as this abstraction, this thing that's out to get you. But government is us, we the people. And government is the place where we can gather. And I still believe that politics is the art of the possible. And I think in these times, we have a lot of challenges ahead of us. I think it's going to be a great focal point to figure out how we can come together, work with our elected officials to create the shared future that we want.
Democracy and food, the food industry, which is, I think, a perfect metaphor. And I do think also that as you were speaking, and what made me think of that book was the fact that service, if you're in the food industry, so much of it, the restaurants, I mean, even the hospitality industry, hotels, it's about serving people, which is what government is supposed to be about at its best, right? When it's doing things right.
And that's what a lot of businesses are doing in this time, right? Restaurants, grocery stores, they're serving us. They're giving us the stuff that we need to get through this critical time. And in many ways, they're on the front lines as well.
Absolutely.
We're asking a lot of them, and they're meeting the challenge. So
in a funny way, our first responders are also the people working in grocery stores and the people that are still making our prescription drug formulations and making sure they get delivered, or delivery people for all kinds of things. Our first responders, I mean, the people putting themselves at risk is a much larger number of people than any crisis I've ever seen in my lifetime.
And another thing that people can do to build community is just thank them. People light up. When I go to the grocery store or restaurant, I just thank them for what they're doing. And they light up. They're like, oh, well, yeah, I appreciate you saying that. And as a soul food scholar, I would probably send sweet potato pie instead of carrot. I'm just saying, as a soul food guy. But
I got it.
I love the gesture, though.
I think a well-made soul food pie would open a lot of doors. No question. And it's, breaking bread with people, it becomes a different relationship.
Yeah, because once you sit at a table with someone, you have to recognize their humanity, right? I mean, you just have to do that. And I just love connecting with people that way. And going forward, I'm just always thinking about how can I bring people together through food.
It sounds to me like you're close to running for office.
Oh, no, I'm way too nice, man.
All right, Adrian. Thank you so much for making time today. Really appreciate it. And we'll chase you down sooner than later. And start thinking about that speech.
All right. I got the rib.
Peace out.
All right. Peace.
Thanks so much.
Yep. Thank you.